Hey everyone, John DeRelay here, Head of Revenue Management Education at Wheelhouse, and we're gearing up for our Texas Coast Market Deep Dive event in February, where we're going to dive into market data all across the Texas coast. We're going to take questions and use Wheelhouse front end and back end tools to kind of look at what's going on and get us ready for both the spring and the summer high season coming up. Today is a little sneak peek. I wanted to show you some data out of South Padre Island in Texas. As you can see, last year, we have a few highlights. A little bit of growth in the market, 10%. Overall, that's quite a bit, but not quite as much as we've seen in some of the other markets. A little bit of attrition and occupancy. That does change a bit as we look at the highest performance. You see not only much higher occupancies, but a much bigger change, as well as more listings moving into that higher performance segment. ADRs themselves staying pretty stable with a little bit of attrition, but not a ton. Now, let's do a little deeper dive and jump into what these occupancy trends kind of look like. And when we look at them year over year, you can kind of see where last year occupancy was pretty much down across the board. Every month at a market level, except for May, we saw some attrition in occupancy. This is a trend that's existing for the entire market, but also the high performers, meaning it's probably a pretty stable trend. Now, what's most interesting to me is we're obviously not that far in January, but January already this year is starting to see some recovery, which is pretty good. And when we look at the pacing for February, the pacing looks really strong. A lot of the time in these low season months, you can kind of napkin math expect to make about half of your revenue in that month. And already the market is past halfway what it was last year. Now, it's probably not going to get up to that 2023 level, but it does look like there's going to be a pretty good year compared to 2024 on the island. To kind of further bolster that sentiment here, I've pulled up the asking rates. So this is the rates that people are charging on the front end of OTAs and kind of what they're advertising. And even though we saw some attrition last year, that attrition was kind of paired with rates that were pretty stable to the previous year. So last year, 2024, really just didn't perform to 2023. The market really wasn't pushing the rates too hard, and still there was lower occupancy. However, that kind of turnaround in the good story that we're starting to see in January for 2025 is showing up here too. We're not seeing significantly lower rates. What we're seeing is actually higher rates or stable rates year over year, but an actual increase or recovery of the occupancy. Now, as we get out into March, April, May, and June, we may want to be a little concerned because that's where we're starting to see the biggest increases in rates. We're a little early in the booking window, but if pacing starts to fall off at all for those months, it might mean that your rates are too high, you're pushing too much for the consumer. It may also be an opportunity for you to pace ahead of the market if you want to, because other people in the market may not be priced adequately for the consumer either. Jumping back into occupancy, we're going to take a look at this at the daily level, looking at this year and next year. Obviously, we're very early in the booking window, so there's pretty limited advanced booking, but we're already starting to see some dates that are popping up as being pretty important. First of all, you can see that this kind of low season occupancy is building up, and it looks like we may have a pretty successful February, particularly compared to the previous year's attrition. Already these dates are getting booked up early, so you have this kind of early to mid-March time period. Now, this shape is already looking different than the previous year. You can see the previous year there was a really big weekend or week around March 14th, and then a big trough, and then a really big weekend around March 30th. This year, you're seeing a much more spread out March 8th to 21st period. It's not spiking quite as high, but it's also much more evenly distributed. And then we're not seeing this March 31st weekend start to appear in the data yet. That should be a signal to you. This area here probably could do some optimization. You might have some rates that are too low and people are just booking them up. You might have some, you really want to keep your production here so we can reach that big spike. If you're looking over at March 31st, though, and you have high rates, you may want to consider that because that demand is not coming in. Furthermore, it looks like we have this trough at the very first week of March. It occurred last year. It's occurring this year. It doesn't seem to be occurring here, but it might be occurring somewhere after this bump. Those are opportunities now where you might start lowering your rates to really try to pace ahead, because if there's only going to be a few weeks that have high occupancy, you want to beat the market on occupancy on those weeks where everyone's competing. Finally, April this year is looking a little different. Instead of April and Easter being around this time frame, where probably causing people to travel, we have it all the way here in mid-late April. And you can already see there's a bump. So if you're not tracking Easter for your rates, you need to be looking out there. There's already early bookings. You want to pay attention and make sure that that's really available. And then, the rest of April doesn't get great occupancy. So I would say if your rates are higher than what you actualized last year and you had a lot of vacancy, bring those down now. And again, try to beat the market on occupancy because everyone's going to be competing. Hope you found this sneak peek in South Padre Island helpful for you. We're going to be doing a big deep dive in February, looking at all the Texas markets. Sign up now for the event. Feel free to ask us questions, and we'll pull that data up live on camera. Have a good one. Bye.